Is a street dog in Borneo, and he is being trapped, ready to be neutered. That's part of what we do in Borneo as Miracles Mission. We are very focused on the trap, neuter and release efforts, and I wanted to start the presentation by just showing you really the front line of what we do. There are many other facets to what we do, but the neutering for us is especially important, and we'll talk about why that is a little bit later on. So let's just pause that and go back. So why are we here today? Well, from my perspective, I am the Rehoming manager for Miracles Mission. So what I would love to do today is try and recruit some potential adopters in the crowd. Now, this doesn't mean having to come and adopt an animal from us immediately. It just means that you might be willing to in the future, you might be open to it. And what we want to do is maybe dispel some of the myths that there might be around adopting animals from abroad and adopting disabled animals. And we want to talk about the ways in which you can give support to Miracles Mission. And then I'm going to tell you about some of the love stories that have evolved over the time since our inception around 10 years ago. I'm going to talk for around 20 minutes, and then you'll get an opportunity at the end to ask me some questions. So we're going to start with a little bit of audience participation. Oh no, I hear you say, but don't worry, it's very easy. So you can stay seated for this, but what I want you to do is I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I just want you to raise your hand if you would consider doing the following things. So if you would consider adopting an animal at any time in the future, please raise your hand. Okay, cool. Keep it raised if you would consider adopting an animal from abroad. Okay, a few less there. Keep it raised if you would consider adopting a disabled animal from abroad. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. What I would like to see by the end of this presentation is a few more hands raised now that we have the information that I'm going to give you as we go through. So, coming up, we're going to meet the team. We're going to talk about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, who we're doing it for, and how you guys can help us. So, first of all, I'll do a proper introduction of myself. My name is Emma McLean. I am a canine behaviourist. I'm the owner and founder of an organisation called Hound Charming, and I'm a mum. One of my children is here with me today, and I'm vegan for the animals. Next up, we've got Victoria Bryson. A lot of you will know Victoria. Victoria is the founder of Miracles Mission. She's the clinical director for the charity. She is an expert in all things dog behaviour, dog disability, and she's also the co-founder of Vegan Events UK, who is hosting us today. So what a talented and dynamic lady she is. Moving on to Catherine, who's our fundraising manager. Catherine's input into our organisation is absolutely key, because without the funds we couldn't do the work that we do. She is queen of the online auctions, and she takes no prisoners when it comes to people who are not paying for the items that they've bought in the auction. You know, if you make a bid on an auction item and you don't pay it, best believe she'd be coming for you. She's serious and she's scary, but she's also vegan for the animals. And next up we have May. May is our Borneo manager, and she was the lady in the clip at the start who was putting the dog into the crate. She will go above and beyond for an animal in need on any given day, and she's a really, really hard worker and a valued member of our team. So here I'm going to introduce you to the 4 R's. They are the 4 R's of our mission. So firstly, reducing the number of strays. We want to see less strays living in suffering on the street on a global scale. Rescuing animals in need, rehabilitating sick and injured animals, and then responsibly rehoming them where possible. And here is a really good example of the rehabilitation process. This is Lara during her time in Egypt. This was how she looked when she was in the shelter, when she was discovered by Victoria and Wes. So you can see here, she's not got the use of her back legs. She's covered in some sort of oily mess, and she was in a horrific physical and mental state. And now, this is what she looks like now. Amazing transformation, beautiful coat. Her whole expression is different. Her outlook on life has changed. She was rescued from the shelter by Victoria. Her rehabilitation has been an ongoing process, and she's just loved beyond measure, and you can see that in terms of how she's been transformed by the care and the love that she's been given. She's living her best life. And what you're going to see now is Lara in action with her sisters at the park. So you can see here she's running in her own fashion. She kind of hops like a bunny, but it's a very joyful picture, you know, and this dog could not move. She could not move, and now she can run and enjoy life just like any other dog. And what I've got here for you is a quote from Victoria Bryson, and it says, "Lara has defied all the odds, and she continues to do so with every step she takes." And that quote means so much because what I know and what I can tell you is that Victoria has had to fight for Lara every step of the way against medical advice, against vets who said she's never going to walk, she's never going to have a quality of life, she needs to be euthanized. That was the message through pretty much every medical professional who met Lara. But Victoria's experience and her knowledge of seeing cases like this unfold allowed her to push through and get her the right vets and the right care so that she could have this quality of life that she has now. So now we're going to talk about our trap, neuter and release projects. We've got an active program in both Borneo and Egypt, and I think these numbers are really, really important, and they sound crazy big, but I'm going to put them in context for you. So neutering one breeding pair of animals, dogs or cats, approximately over a 6-year period, neutering just that one pair will prevent from their descendants 67,000 unwanted animals being born onto the streets on a global scale. So since our inception 10 years ago, we have, as an organisation, prevented 234.5 million unwanted animals from being born. Now, those numbers are so big, you're like, I don't know what to do with that. So to put it in perspective, there are around 300 million unwanted animals in the world. So in our 10 years, we have prevented that from doubling, in effect, just through our TNR programs. And I think that's something that we as an organisation should be incredibly proud of. That is a huge effort towards animal welfare across the globe. And we can't do it alone. We need your help, basically. And, you know, these animals that we prevent from being born onto the street, the chain link effect is that they then don't need rescuing. They don't end up sick and injured like little Hamish did. And I'm going to introduce you to him now as a case study. So Hamish was a blind puppy. When we met him, he was already blind by the time he was 1. He wasn't born blind, he'd become blind because he'd been bitten by a tick, and it infected him with blood parasites. So these tick-borne viruses that are prevalent in countries like Egypt or Saudi Arabia or other places around the world, they're really, really serious, and they take over the dog's system, they erode the organs, they lose the sight, and eventually they will kill the dog if left untreated. Now, Hamish had been infected, obviously, as a younger puppy, and somebody had rescued him and taken him to a shelter, but then what had happened is one of the shelter workers had kicked him and broke his leg. So when we became involved, he had a leg that needed reconstruction, He couldn't see. He had gunk coming out of his eyes. He weighed around 4 kilos. Now, his true body weight should have been about 10. So that shows you in what a terrible state he was in. And again, he's one of these dogs where, you know, the British veterinary profession looked at him, took one look at him when we got him over, and were like, there's nothing that can be done for him. He needs to be euthanized. And we were like, no, that's not happening. He's 1 year old. Let's give him a chance. Let's try. Because they weren't even willing to try without some really robust kind of feedback from us. So what we did, he had his medical assessment in the UK. We got him over. We raised the travel funding from our donors. When people saw Hamish in the state he was in, obviously they wanted to help, so we managed to raise that money quite quickly. He had a surgery to reconstruct his leg, and the total spend for that was about £4,000, but that was collected from our donors. His adopter, the lady who took him in, she didn't have to pay a penny towards that. So you might be thinking, well, yeah, I'd love to adopt a disabled animal, but I can't afford those kind of numbers. You don't have to be able to. You know, you just have to be willing to care for the animal and see it through. That's all we're asking. And with Hamish, once the leg was fixed, it was fixed. You know, he didn't have to have lots of ongoing medical treatment or bills. It was a one-time fix, and as you can see, the result has been totally priceless. He looks like a little teddy bear from that very, very sorry little man he was in the shelter to this gorgeous kind of model. And he, again, is living his best life in the UK. So what do you have to do? If you want to adopt from us, it's a simple process. We are rigorous and we are strict and selective about who we have, because these animals have been through a lot. So we want and we expect people who are willing to go the distance and really see it through with the dog. You know, whenever I get an application, in the notes section, it says on the end, how do I give them back if it doesn't work out? I'm like, bin it. We don't want people like that. This is a lifelong commitment, you know. But what we ask is a written application, and then we do a video home check. So you take a video of your house, you send it to us, and then we meet on Zoom so that we can see face to face who we are, talk through anything that you need to be aware of, any questions. And here we've got another kind of before and after story, one that's very dear to my heart. This was my first Egyptian rescue, Wedda. That's her in the top there when she was in the shelter. So again, you can see a very sorry, sad looking dog. What had happened to Wedda is she was living on the street in Egypt and she was pregnant, and a man decided that he was going to attack her with a piece of wood with a nail in it. And he broke both her front legs and he gouged out her eye, and her puppies passed away, basically. So that was how she was found, and she then was taken to a shelter but didn't receive any medical treatment. And there she waited for 6 long years before I stumbled across her and then had to make her mine, basically. And you can see now in the bottom what she looks like now. Again, her whole outlook on life is different. You know, she's been a complicated dog, I'm not going to lie. You know, there have been challenges with Wedda because of the trauma that she's endured from people. You know, it wasn't just a give her a comfy bed, give her a nice toy and everything's fine. There was a process that we had to go through. As my friend Sophie knows, there was highs and lows, but we got to a good place in the end because I made that commitment to her and I was going to stick to it, and it all came good in the end. And it always does. Given the right amount of time, all of these animals do come good in the end. So let's move on. And you might be thinking, well, you've talked a lot about dogs, Emma. What about the cats? On to the cats. And another one of my rescues, this time is Mr. Silver, Ella's favourite. We got Silver from Azerbaijan, and actually Sophie, who's sitting in the front row, amazingly flew out to Azerbaijan to bring him back to the UK for us, which was just a lovely thing to do. And he was born congenitally deformed, so he's got a medical condition basically which is degenerative, and it affects his limbs, it affects his feet and his tail and his head. All his joints basically in the connective tissue are defective, and it does cause pain as well, so he's on a pain management system. But he was tossed out of the kitten mill in which he was bred because they knew they wouldn't be able to sell him. So he was left to fend for himself on the street, and honestly, having met that cat, he'd have lasted about 5 minutes if somebody hadn't have rescued him. He's not a street cat, and he never should be or will be. But look at him now. This is him enjoying himself with one of his toys. I don't know if you're going to get the sound on that. There should be sound on it, but anyway, this is him just kind of doing his kitten thing and having, you know, a good life, a normal life. And we absolutely adore Silver. He is such a huge personality, such a character. And like, I don't know if any of you know the expression cute rage, where you're just like, nah! He's one of those. He just incites that complete, oh my God, you're so cute. And yeah, we just wouldn't be without him. And we love him more because he's disabled, if that makes sense. He's just, yeah, he's just everything. He really is. Okay, so this is a big question that we get. Why animals from abroad? Well, why animals from abroad when there's so many unwanted animals in the UK? Yeah, fair comment, but my argument to that would be the animals in the UK have legislation to protect them. They have organisations and charities that are set up with lots of funding to protect them. These animals in Egypt, Borneo, Azerbaijan, wherever, they have nothing. They have no protection. You can go out and beat a dog to death in the street in Egypt. No one's going to do anything. You know, you can literally tie a dog to the back of your car and drive it around the street. No one will stop you. So that is why animals from abroad, because they need us more. They just need us more. So now we're moving on to our FAQs from adopters. I thought it would be good for you guys to hear the commonly asked questions so that you can maybe allay some concerns or some fears that you might have about adopting from abroad. So, will the animals be screened for diseases? Yes, they will. To the best of our ability, all animals will come in a good state of health. Having said that, they're coming from shelters, crowded conditions. They're not going to arrive immaculately fluffed up, and we can't guarantee they're going to be flea-free because they've just been living with 2,000 dogs. So, you know, it is what it is, but we do our best, is what I would say. They'll all be microchipped, and when they come over, you just register them to you. What if I encounter behaviour problems? Now, that's a big one, because if you're the usual person that's rescued a dog, let's say you've gone down to your local RSPCA, fair play, you've got a dog, maybe you've introduced that dog to your resident dog on a meet and greet and it's all gone fine, there's some sense that those dogs might get on. When you're adopting from us, the dog turns up on day one and you just have to deal with it. You don't know whether they're going to like each other. So for that reason, we offer in-house behaviour support for all our adoptions for life. That's dogs and cats. And if there's ever a problem that we feel we can't deal with, or it's too specialist, we'll get you the right person involved to make that placement work for the rest of the animal's life, and so it's manageable for you and it's good for them. The costs is another thing that comes up a lot. So it does cost a lot of money to bring a dog over from Egypt, but when we are bringing over disabled animals, our rehoming criteria and our trustee criteria is that we will assist financially for those disabled animals, because that is our mission basically. So oftentimes if you wanted to adopt, let's say, a three-legged dog from Egypt, oftentimes all you would have to contribute is the adoption fee of £200, which is no different than if you went off to your local rehoming centre and adopted a dog. So we try and make it, you know, as reasonable as possible. Obviously, if someone's got sufficient means to make a contribution to the animal's travel, then we do ask them to do that. But if they can't, they can't. Having said that, anyone adopting any animal under any circumstances must have sufficient resources to protect the animal and keep them well. So, you know, if people are telling us, well, I can't afford 200 quid, it's like, well, you probably can't afford to have a dog then, I'm sorry, you know. Okay, so next is fundraising. We can't exist without fundraising, as I said at the start. So the ways that we raise money is through vegan online auctions. So we don't profit off non-vegan items. We only sell vegan items in our auctions. We get public donations, and also Vegan Events UK, who are hosting us, siphon money into Miracle's mission. So it really is what you're attending now, you're supporting disabled animals in doing that as well. So thank you. And here we have some dogs and cats that have been under our care during our neutering or our street feeding projects. And I think it's important for you to see them because there are so many of them, as I said earlier, and some of them, you know, they are quite anonymous, but it's good to see them and to connect with them and remember that these are individual lives that we're trying to help. They're huge numbers, but they're individual animals and individual lives, you know, that we want to make better. Okay, so now we're moving on to what does being a vegan animal charity mean for us. So as I said, it's about selling only vegan items. We also support vegan feeding for dogs. So myself and Victoria both feed our dogs vegan. Victoria has done so for a very, very long time. And we only support and partner with other vegan businesses. We don't align ourselves with any non-vegan businesses. And some of our partner businesses are up on the screen there. There are many, many more, but probably too many to mention. I don't want to overrun on my time. So this quote here is another one from Victoria, and it's one that I love because it's something that she said to me in one of our private conversations. And basically I wanted to start feeding my dogs vegan, and I was just kind of struggling to get there in my head slightly. And I said, can you offer any advice about that? And what she said was, it makes no sense to me to save one life and then take countless more to feed it. And I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. But hearing it like that in those terms was just enough for me. And I was like, yes. Like, why would we be going out and saving one dog and then killing hundreds of other animals to feed that dog for the rest of its life? It makes no sense at all. So I always keep that in mind whenever I'm kind of thinking about vegan feeding for dogs. And the great thing about vegan feeding for dogs currently is, I don't know if you're aware, but Dr. Ariel Griffiths at Just Be Kind has been successful in proving, with the recognition of the British Veterinary Council, that vegan feeding for dogs is not only appropriate, but they can thrive on it. So we've known it for a long time, but now we have the science to back it up. So there is no reason to be feeding animals to dogs. And finally, before we finish today, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Famous. I'm going to be meeting him later and I'm so excited about it. This is Batel. Batel is another rescue of Miracle's mission, and he was horrifically abused and mutilated by somebody in Egypt, and they cut off his paw. And Wes, who co-founded Vegan Events UK and Victoria, found him in the shelter like this, and you can see how awful and raw his paw looks, and they rescued him and brought him over. His rehabilitation has been intense, both physically and mentally. He's needed a lot of care, but he's been given the best care available to him, and he's been rehomed to the best parents in the world, and he's now living an incredible life, and I just can't wait to see him later. I'm so excited. Okay, so this is Batel in action. So as you can see, he runs in his own fashion, and that's Wes running with him there. Little bit of a rocking horse kind of gait, but he is an example for all of us about overcoming adversity and doing it all with a smile on his face. You know, he comes out of episode after episode with his health and stuff, and he is just, I mean, he is amazing. He's nothing short of amazing. so many times we've thought we're losing him, and then he just rallies and comes back to fight another round, basically. And I'll just talk you through a little bit about his kind of history. So he's had numerous surgeries with some of the best vets in the country. He's battled kidney disease, he's had special diets, ongoing physio and hydrotherapy. But I know from having spoken to Victoria and Wes that the financial cost of that is irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant, because a day spent with that dog is priceless, and they wouldn't change a thing. So, this is one of my little catchphrases at the moment, and it's that our adopters are a rare breed in and of themselves. And what I mean by that is, as I said earlier, we want people who are going to go the distance, who are going to adapt themselves to fit the animal, not expect the animal to be a certain way or act a certain way or move a certain way. You know, we want people who can recognise that these animals have come from the worst beginnings and give them the best possible life they can. So if anyone in the crowd thinks that that might be them, come and speak to me afterwards. So now, just before we finish, we're going to return to the hands up exercise. So again, remember, this is not a definite, this is just would you consider in the future. So now that you've heard what I've had to say today, who would consider in future adopting an animal? Good. Who would consider adopting an animal from abroad? Okay. And who would consider adopting a disabled animal from abroad? Yay! There's definitely more hands. Okay, you and you, see me after. No, I'm kidding. I'm really pleased with that, because that means that I've done my job today. It means that I've changed a few hearts and minds, and that one day I might be getting your application come through on my emails, which I would be very, very happy to get. So, today we have learned the why, the how, and the who of what we do. In rehearsal, I got that wrong every single time, and I just nailed it, so go me. But adoption is not the only way that you can help us. You can do it by making donations, you can do it by attending these events, you can volunteer on the Miracles Mission stall, you can give us a like, give us a share on Facebook. If you don't follow us already, come and follow us on Facebook, share our adoption posts, tell a friend about us, whatever. There are lots of ways that you can get involved, and if you can think of any others, our email is on the bottom. Give us an email, we'd be happy to hear from you. And I'll be milling around the festival for the next hour or two, although I will be meeting Battelle, so please don't disturb me during that time. And if you've got any questions for me, I'd love to hear them now. Any questions? If you don't have questions for me, I'm going to start and pick on you and ask you questions instead. Can anyone tell me what TNR stands for? I started with it at the beginning. Yes. Huh? Release. Yeah, you were halfway there, that's fine. Anybody else got any questions for me? Yes? Ah, good question. Do we have to have a garden? That's a really good question. The answer is no, but we would match you to a dog that didn't need a garden. Some dogs do, some dogs don't. We recently rehomed a very small lap dog to a lady who didn't have a garden, and we were initially a bit like, is this going to be okay? But when I saw her home check video and I saw how amazingly her house was laid out, specifically for her dog, like little window seats so he could look out, 3 walks a day, I thought, yeah, why not? Why not? You know, it's not a one size fits all. Some dogs would need a garden, other dogs don't. Yeah, exactly. It's about having a nice environment. That doesn't mean you have to own your own garden for that. Yeah, so get your application in. Anybody else? No? Okay, lovely. Thanks for listening.